I would like to, thinking about a perspective from the Global South, I would like to start with a personal experience. Several years ago, when I was part of a team that was planting a church in Bogota, in Colombia, I was sharing with a young person that was in a Bible study in my house. I was sharing with him about Jesus, and he said right since the beginning, I don't believe in God. So I tried to convince him using all my arguments and all the training that I had gotten in a seminary about the reason why it is perfectly logic and is reasonable to believe in God. So he was using one argument, and I was using another one. Then he attacked the Bible, so I was defending the Bible about all, or using all the scientific data that I had to defend the Bible. And then he was attacking the church, and I was explaining why the church is the body of Christ, etc., etc., etc. At the end of our conversation, he was without arguments. I was winning in that conversation. So I thought he is going to be Christian just now because he doesn't have arguments or reasons why don't believe in God. But he didn't decide to follow Christ that evening. As a matter of fact, he is still an atheist. I was, without knowing, following one of the results of the Reformation, one of the principles of the Reformation. As a result of the Reformation, in several churches, there is the idea that we can, with the right methods, determine a pure objective truth with absolute certainty. So when we understand, as a result of the Reformation, truth, religious truth, as propositional declarations about God, we expect that every person will arrive at the same conclusions if they begin from a sincere point without preconceptions. So is this idea coming from the Reformation that if we have this specific set of doctrines right, then we know God. Because truth, from the perspective of the Reformation, has to do with, again, reason, propositional statements, and doctrines. However, the result of this way of understanding truth, has been a divided Christianity, which each of its parts claiming its own perspective to be unique valid. This approach tends to create boundaries based on one simple question, and maybe you have had this kind of question. Is this person sharing the exact same doctrines that I hold? In this approach, doctrines instead of practices become the tool to judge whether or not one is a Christian. But divisions are not the only problem with this approach. Claims to absolute certainty about faith, as expressed in carefully formulated systematic statements, could easily provide a rationale for condemning to hell all those who disagree. So thinking about lessons learned from the Reformation, when we heard about all the wars, the wars that were emerging because of this way of thinking, is to get back some years prior to the Reformation, to speak in order to understand truth, not as something that is only rational, or that is basically related to a set of doctrines, but understand truth as a person. Understand truth as something that I can, let's say, learn when I have a personal experience. Knowing God from the perspective of the radical Reformation has not to do with doctrines only. It has to do with experience, with a personal relationship with God. Truth is something that we know only when we are transformed in our relationship with God. And I do think that's very important for religious liberty or religious freedom. Because when we understand truth as something that is experiential, that has to do with my own experience, then I can speak with others. I can bear witness about my own experience and also hear about the experience of others. When I focus truth only as a set of doctrines, it's so easy to condemn others and say that they are not speaking about the same God. Thank you very much.